Kind of a sparse crowd. Now you have to guess if I'm talking about Raw crowds or the Hall of Fame class. I'm Chris Wall with the Wrestling Vlog, who always tells it like it is. Only 5 people in groups this year, one more than each of the last 2 years. But unlike last year, there was no controversial pick, in my opinion, like Kaufman. So let's get through them and see what they bring to the Hall. Let's start with the celebrity wing, which I still think should be closed and shuttered before we have a President Drew Carey or, worse, President Kid Rock. But I guess that this one deserves it for being in the first WrestleMania. Muhammad Ali is beyond any doubt the greatest boxer that has ever held the heavyweight crown. So having him as the special guest referee of the main event at Madison Square Garden, it may have been just one appearance, but it cemented what WrestleMania was all about for the last 4 decades. So sure, put him in. Speaking of the first WrestleMania, who remembers that the U.S. Express were the tag team champions going into that? Even more so, who remembers who were the members of the U.S. Express? Did you know that one of them was the man last called Owen R. Shyster, and that he was the father of the recently deceased Bray Wyatt? And the other was his brother-in-law and member of the Four Horsemen? Well, of course you didn't. But Mike Rotundo and Barry Windham are 2-time tag champs and have led great careers afterwards. Yeah. Put Rotundo in, and Windham in again. Then there is Claude Thunderbolt Patterson. He's never been in the WWE, but he's been around the block several times. He was well known in the NWA, especially here in Florida and in Georgia. He held numerous tag team titles in the Uber organization with greats like Ole Anderson, Tony Atlas, and Johnny Valentine, father of Greg the Hammer. He held a few other singles titles, including a few brass knuckles championships. So you must have been someone Logan Paul looks up to. He was also an advocate against poor working conditions for pro wrestlers in the 1970s, and was even blacklisted when he complained about racism in the sport. But the important thing here is, the dude's still alive. Yeah, he's 82 and still kicking. Whether he'll make the show or not is not quite known. Fairly sure he will, but even without being in the WWE, he's done so much for the sport as a whole. Put him in. Now, Bull Nakano. She was in the WWE back in the mid-1990s, but only for a brief while. She came in before SummerSlam 1994 and challenged for Lunder Blaze's women's title. She didn't win it there, but she would win it in Japan before Survivor Series. 5 months later, however, she'd lose it back to Blaze and then get kicked out for allegedly being found with cocaine on her person. She would go to WCW, who obviously didn't care what people took as long as it wasn't steroids, and stay there for a year before retiring. I barely remembered who Nakano was when she was announced for the Hall, but I did remember her being an absolute beast, kind of like a Japanese Nia Jax in a way. Perhaps she wasn't in the WWE or its captured subsidiaries long enough to warrant a Hall of Fame nod in the past, but now that the gates are kicked open and Vince is kicked out, I guess she'll make a good part of the women's ring. But of course, having Paul Heyman in the Hall is natural. The dude has been around the wrestling block since his bar mitzvah, managing since 1987 as Paulie Dangerously and bringing many heels to greater heights. His run in WCW, including his Dangerous Alliance feud with Jim Cornette's group, made him legendary. And his turning a little-known offshoot of NWA into the most violent wrestling show to ever be given a cable show made him pretty much immortal. When WWE bought up ECW, he helped integrate a dozen or so stars from it into the WWE family. His only downslide with the WWE was when they gave him a newer version of ECW, one that was infinitely less violent and bloody. Even he thought it was a joke, and he left it before the year was out. But then he started gathering Paul Heyman guys. Phillip Brooks, Brock Lesnar, Curtis Axel, and of course, the reigning, defending WWE Universal Champion, Roman Reigns. Every time Heyman gets on the mic, it's a pleasure to hear him speak, talking spoilers instead of predictions, and chatting up his clients so much that they started to believe they were as unstoppable as he says they are. Even at 58, he hasn't slowed down in the least. And at a time where Hall of Famers don't have to be retired or soon to be retired, Paul can pad his ego enough so that it won't hurt so much when Reigns ditches him. So yeah, all these folks deserve their spot in the WWE Hall of Fame. May not be too long before those like Bray Wyatt, Lillian Garcia, maybe even Shane McMahon will get in. And I'll stop touting for Owen Hart's inclusion out of respect for his widow who doesn't want him in for now. Maybe she'll come around someday. Next week, Stand and Deliver and WrestleMania predictions. I'm Chris Wolvie with the Wrestling Blog, who always tells it like it is. Pray for peace. And I'll see you